has confirmed it's launched an attack on Iran.
In the early hours of the morning, a deadly silence is shattered by the shrill sound of air raid sirens. It's 4:50 a.m. at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, home to thousands of U.S. soldiers. Panic quickly sets in as the screens in the Combined Air and Space Operations Center flash red, signaling an incoming attack. But what appears to be a coordinated assault by hundreds of drones quickly turns into something far more dangerous. An elaborate trap, designed to overwhelm the world's most advanced missile defense systems. Iran's top military generals believe they have finally outwitted the United States. They launch 120 Shahed drones, and what seems like a swarm of low-cost, expendable flying bombs fills the skies. Their goal is simple: flood the U.S. defenses and force them to expend millions of dollars in interceptors to bring down each drone. A clever trick, but the reality is much darker. Hidden behind this storm of drones are 40 ballistic missiles, poised to strike with devastating precision. But what the Iranian commanders don't realize is that the U.S. military is ready for this exact scenario. As the drones close in on their targets, the Americans remain calm, fully aware of the capabilities at their disposal. The $20 drones may be cheap, but the cost of intercepting them with Patriots, at $4 million each, is astronomical. And the U.S. isn't playing into Iran's trap. The situation unfolds as a high-tech battle of wits. The U.S. activates its advanced microwave defense system, Leonidas, which creates an invisible wall of electromagnetic energy that disables the drone's electronic components. Meanwhile, the CRAM phalanx systems work tirelessly to destroy the surviving drones, reducing them to dust. But this is just the beginning. While the drones fall from the sky in fiery explosions, the true threat approaches: the ballistic missiles. In seconds, the THAAD missile defense system locks on to the incoming Fateh 110 and Qayyam-1 rockets. Precision-guided and automated, the interceptors do their job without hesitation, annihilating the missiles before they can hit their targets. The attackers have failed, but this isn't over yet. The real surprise for Iran comes when U.S. fighter jets are launched into the skies. Stealthy and armed with cutting-edge technology, the F-35 Lightning II fighters track the Iranian radar signals, while F-15E Strike Eagles close in. A few well-placed bombs, and the Iranian Su-24 bombers, once a major threat, are nothing more than smoldering wrecks. As the dust settles over the battlefield, one question remains: how did Iran miscalculate so badly? The U.S. military didn't just defend against an attack, it turned the tables, eliminating the Iranian offensive with remarkable efficiency and minimal cost. But the real kicker? Iran, in its desperation, handed over critical intelligence to the U.S. military, unknowingly exposing its own weaknesses. U.S. Navy destroyers launched Tomahawk missiles with pinpoint accuracy, targeting Iranian bunkers hidden deep in the Zagros Mountains. The question arises: could Iran have avoided this disaster, or was this inevitable? Stay tuned as we break down this incredible showdown between two military giants, and ask yourself, what would you do if you were in Iran's shoes? At 4:50 a.m. on a quiet day in the Middle East, the hum of routine operations at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar was violently interrupted. The air raid sirens blared to life, cutting through the early morning stillness with an urgency that sent waves of panic through the thousands of U.S. personnel stationed at one of the most strategic military hubs in the region. In the span of a few heartbeats, the soldiers scrambled for cover, diving into the reinforced concrete bunkers that dotted the base, built to withstand everything from aerial bombardments to missile strikes. The military complex, home to numerous fighter jets, bombers, and surveillance aircraft, had just become the target of one of the most complex and audacious attacks ever orchestrated by Iran in the ongoing regional conflict. As the alarm system continued its relentless screech, officers in the Combined Air and Space Operations Center quickly assessed the situation. The radar screens flared bright red as thousands of hostile contacts appeared, blinking ominously on the digital maps. The threat seemed overwhelming. 120 Shahed drones, the notorious Iranian unmanned aerial vehicles known for their crude construction yet devastating payloads, were rapidly approaching. These drones were designed to overwhelm enemy defenses with sheer numbers, making it almost impossible for conventional air defense systems to intercept every single one. But behind the swarm of drones, a far more insidious threat loomed. 40 ballistic missiles, some of Iran's most advanced, hidden within the flock of drones. The drones were simply a decoy, a distraction to trick the U.S. systems into wasting valuable interceptors on low-priority targets while the missiles closed in on their true targets. Iranian military planners believed they had finally found a way to breach American defenses. They had studied U.S. operations for years and knew the weaknesses in the system. The concept was simple. Use a swarm of low-cost drones to push the U.S. defense systems into overdrive, forcing them to burn through expensive interceptors like the Patriot missile system, each one costing millions of dollars. Once the drones exhausted the U.S. defenses, the missiles would follow, striking their intended targets with precision. Iran hoped this would cripple the U.S. presence in the region and shift the balance of power in the Middle East. However, they underestimated the sophistication of America's response. The United States, well aware of the risks of such a tactic, was not caught off guard. The American defense network had long prepared for scenarios just like this, using cutting-edge technology to counter what many would consider an impossible attack. As the first wave of drones neared the base, a calm determination took over the officers in the operations center. Instead of relying solely on intercepting every drone, the U.S. military deployed a multi-layered defense strategy that would ultimately prove the superiority of American technological innovations. The most crucial element of this defense was the microwave weapon system known as Leonidas, a classified project that had recently been rolled out for active use. Leonidas, designed to neutralize drones and missiles in a way no conventional interceptor could, sent out a powerful beam of electromagnetic energy. This beam, invisible to the naked eye, incapacitated the electrical systems of the drones as they entered range, causing them to fall from the sky in flames. The drones that made it past the Leonidas system were dealt with by the C-RAM Phalanx guns, which shredded any remaining threats into dust before they could reach the base. Yet while the drones were falling, the true danger remained. The 40 ballistic missiles that had been concealed within the swarm. These missiles, capable of carrying devastating payloads, were the real objective of the Iranian commanders. As the missiles closed in, the U.S. military turned to its tried and true missile defense systems, including the THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. This advanced technology, capable of intercepting missiles at high altitudes with pinpoint accuracy, locked onto the incoming Fateh 110 and Qayyam-1 rockets. Within seconds, the THAAD systems fired their interceptors, neutralizing the missiles before they could even come close to their targets. What was once a seemingly overwhelming threat had been rendered harmless by the rapid and efficient deployment of America's missile defense systems. In those tense moments, as the Iranian missiles were neutralized in mid-flight, and the last drone fell to the ground in a cloud of smoke and debris, the U.S. military not only thwarted an attack, it delivered a clear message to the world. Despite Iran's calculated gamble, the United States had proven that no matter how sophisticated the assault, their defenses could not only withstand the threat, but eliminate it with efficiency and precision. For Iran, this was a humiliating defeat. Not only had their attack failed, but their entire strategy had been exposed for what it was: a desperate attempt to challenge a military power far beyond their reach. For the U.S., however, it was a victory that would resonate far beyond the confines of the Middle East, reaffirming their position as the unrivaled technological and military power on the global stage. As the attack on Al Udeid Air Base unfolded, Iranian commanders believed they had successfully tricked the U.S. military into a vulnerable position. Their strategy was both clever and audacious. Overwhelm American defense systems with a flood of low-cost drones, and in the chaos, slip in their real weapon: ballistic missiles capable of causing catastrophic damage. This tactic had been in the making for months, with Iranian generals studying every aspect of U.S. defense operations, searching for weaknesses to exploit. They had hoped that the sheer volume of incoming targets would force the U.S. to waste its precious missile interceptors, each costing millions of dollars, on cheap, disposable drones. But what they had not fully anticipated was the sheer sophistication of American technology, a response so precise that it would turn the tide of the conflict in a matter of minutes. The Iranian strategy was rooted in the assumption that the U.S. would be forced to use its expensive Patriot missiles and THAAD interceptors to protect their critical assets. The drones, while not individually powerful, were meant to saturate the U.S. defenses and create an illusion of an overwhelming attack. This would supposedly tie up resources, making it difficult for the U.S. to focus on the real threat: the 40 advanced Fateh 110 and Qayyam-1 ballistic missiles, armed with payloads capable of wreaking havoc on the U.S. airbase. For Iran, this was a calculated risk, a chance to strike at the heart of American power in the region and alter the balance of military influence. However, what the Iranian generals didn't account for was the U.S. military's ability to think several steps ahead. American defense systems were designed not just to respond to attacks, but to outsmart them. The United States had anticipated such tactics long before the Iranian assault took place. Over the years, the U.S. had been developing and deploying cutting-edge technologies that could neutralize even the most sophisticated missile and drone threats with unparalleled precision. As the drones began their rapid approach toward the base, American commanders calmly activated their multi-layered defense systems. The U.S. wasn't just relying on missile interceptors. It had a secret weapon in play: a microwave-based defense system known as Leonidas, a classified project that had only recently been introduced. The weapon emitted a powerful electromagnetic pulse, capable of disabling the electronics inside incoming drones. The Iranian drones, their guidance systems fried by the pulse, fell from the sky in flames, their mission to overwhelm the U.S. defense system utterly thwarted. Even the more advanced drones, which had been equipped with rudimentary countermeasures, were no match for the precise, directed energy of the Leonidas system. The C-RAM Phalanx guns, designed to target and destroy any remaining threats in midair, took care of the few drones that survived the initial assault. The system unleashed a rapid barrage of high-velocity rounds, tearing through the fragile drones and scattering debris across the desert sands. Within moments, the skies above Al Udeid base were clear of Iranian drones, and the American defenders breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the real challenge was still approaching. As the drones fell, the 40 ballistic missiles launched by Iran remained a serious threat. These missiles were designed to carry payloads that could destroy critical infrastructure, disrupt military operations, and severely weaken U.S. presence in the region. However, the U.S. was prepared for this as well. The THAAD, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, a multi-tiered missile defense system capable of intercepting ballistic missiles at high altitudes, was already locking onto the incoming Fateh 110 and Qayyam-1 missiles. The system's powerful radars and infrared sensors tracked the missiles with stunning accuracy. And before they could even get within striking range of their intended targets, THAAD launched a series of interceptors that obliterated the missiles mid-flight. Iran's hopes of catching the U.S. off guard with their missiles crumbled as each threat was neutralized with surgical precision. The missiles that Iran had hoped would cripple the American military machine were intercepted and destroyed before they could cause any harm. For the Iranian generals, the sense of desperation must have been palpable as they watched their strategy fall apart in real time. Iran's calculated plan to cripple the U.S. military presence in the region by flooding the skies with drones had backfired spectacularly. The swarm, intended to overwhelm the U.S. defense systems, had been swiftly neutralized by a combination of advanced technologies and preemptive planning. What Iran had hoped would be a game-changer turned into a testament to American military superiority. The sophisticated response from the U.S. not only thwarted Iran's immediate plans, but exposed a fundamental weakness in the Iranian strategy: their reliance on brute force, rather than the precision and technological superiority of modern warfare. Iran's military was left scrambling to reassess its approach, as the U.S. military's seamless, efficient response had sent a clear message to Tehran. No matter how cunning the strategy, America's technological edge was unbeatable. As the dust settled over Al Udeid Air Base and the immediate threat from Iranian drones and missiles was neutralized, the battle was far from over. What the Iranian leadership hadn't anticipated was the U.S. military's calculated, almost surgical response that not only defended the base, but also set the stage for a powerful counteroffensive that would demonstrate America's unrivaled technological advantage in modern warfare. The destruction of Iran's initial missile barrage marked just the beginning of the unraveling of their offensive strategy. The real test was about to begin. How would the U.S. respond to this aggression? And what consequences would follow for Iran's failed assault? In the hours after the attack, as the smoldering remains of Iranian drones and missiles were swept from the desert sands, U.S. commanders on the ground and at military command centers began evaluating their options. The priority was clear: send a message to Tehran that any act of aggression, especially one of this magnitude, would result in swift and overwhelming retaliation. The Iranians, who had hoped to cripple American operations in the Middle East, now found themselves at the mercy of U.S. military might. With every second that passed, the strategic advantage was slipping from Iran's grasp. At 9 a.m., just hours after the initial assault, U.S. forces launched a series of retaliatory airstrikes aimed directly at Iran's military infrastructure. The targets were selected with precision, each one chosen to cripple Iran's ability to launch another coordinated attack. The first wave of strikes targeted the key missile sites that had been responsible for firing on the base. The Fateh 110 and Qayyam-1 missiles, which had been neutralized in mid-flight, were rendered even more impotent when U.S. bombers and fighter jets launched a series of precision-guided munitions to destroy the remaining launch sites. These sites, nestled deep in Iranian military installations, were believed to house not only the launchers for the missiles, but also critical supply caches and command centers used to orchestrate missile and drone attacks. American bombers, operating under the cover of stealth, made short work of these fortified positions. Within minutes, explosions lit up the Iranian landscape as the airstrikes left craters where once stood the machinery of war. But the U.S. wasn't finished yet. As the initial strikes were launched, a secondary mission was already underway: the destruction of key air defense systems, which would prevent any further Iranian retaliation. The Iranian air defense network had long been a source of pride for the Islamic Republic, a series of layered systems designed to protect key military and civilian targets from airstrikes. But in the face of America's technological superiority, these defenses were shown to be no match. A wave of high-altitude bombers, equipped with electronic warfare capabilities, engaged Iran's radar installations, effectively blinding the country's ability to track U.S. aircraft. At the same time, U.S. fighters armed with anti-radiation missiles targeted and destroyed Iran's missile defense systems. The results were swift and devastating. The sophisticated Russian-made S-300 air defense systems, which had been considered some of the most formidable in the world, were rendered useless within moments. As the Iranian military command scrambled to react, the U.S. was already advancing to its next phase of retaliation. By noon, U.S. cyber units had infiltrated Iran's military networks, launching a coordinated digital assault on the heart of their defense infrastructure. This cyber attack targeted Iran's communications systems, rendering them inoperable and causing widespread disruption in their ability to coordinate military movements. Iranian generals, unaware of the scope of the U.S. digital assault, were left paralyzed, unable to issue orders to their forces. The once vaunted Iranian military, which had been confident of its ability to challenge American supremacy, found itself crippled by a multifaceted counteroffensive that proved the superiority of U.S. technological capabilities. But while the U.S. was dealing its blows to Iranian infrastructure, the consequences for Tehran were far-reaching beyond the battlefield. Iran's leadership, already facing intense pressure due to crippling economic sanctions, found their position increasingly untenable. The failed assault on Al Udeid Air Base, which had been seen as a decisive step in their efforts to challenge U.S. dominance in the region, was now a humiliation. The attack, instead of weakening America's influence, had highlighted the impotence of Iran's military strategy and exposed the vulnerabilities within their armed forces. The leadership in Tehran, already struggling to maintain control over a population dissatisfied with economic hardship, found their credibility severely damaged. The miscalculation on the battlefield was now compounded by a loss of face on the international stage. In the aftermath, the political ramifications within Iran were swift and brutal. As U.S. missiles rained down on their military sites, the Iranian leadership faced increasing calls for accountability from both within their ranks and from the international community. The failure to incapacitate a key American base and the subsequent devastation of Iran's military infrastructure would have long-term consequences for their ability to project power in the region. The loss of their advanced missile capabilities and air defense systems severely limited Iran's capacity to carry out future strikes with any semblance of success. The attack, meant to demonstrate strength, had instead shown the world just how vulnerable Iran had become. For the U.S., the successful defense and the subsequent retaliatory strikes sent a powerful message to Iran and to the wider world. It wasn't just a victory in terms of military strategy. It was a statement of technological superiority. The Leonidas microwave system, which had been instrumental in neutralizing the drone threat, became a symbol of the new age of warfare, one in which cutting-edge technology, not sheer numbers, dictated the course of battle. The U.S. military's use of advanced countermeasures, including the THAAD and Patriot missile defense systems, was a testament to the effectiveness of modern warfare tactics that combined hardware, software, and intelligence to create an impenetrable defense network. As the international community watched the aftermath unfold, it became clear that the U.S. was not just a dominant military power. It was the future of warfare itself. The long-term effects of the Iranian attack and the subsequent U.S. response would be felt for years to come. The battle had cemented the idea that any aggression against American assets, no matter how sophisticated the attack, would be met with overwhelming force. The United States had not only defended its interests, but also demonstrated its commitment to maintaining a technological edge in military affairs. Iran, on the other hand, had suffered a humiliating setback, one that would resonate across the region as a reminder of the price of miscalculation when taking on a technologically superior adversary.